जम्मू कश्मीर के लिए उठने वाली आवाजें अब जम्मू कश्मीर की ही होगी।
I thought that giving a voice to the people from Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan or even POJK was one of the prime agendas we must pursue.
अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जम्मू कश्मीर शोध संस्थान का पहला ऑफलाइन लॉन्च जम्मू में हुआ, जिसमें जम्मू कश्मीर सहित दुनिया भर के कई गणमान्य लोगों ने हिस्सा लिया।
Jammu leadership has not emerged. It has to emerge, and how it can emerge, that is the question. And once that emerges, Jammu will be heard all over the world.
इस कार्यक्रम में सिंधु नदी समझौते के मामले पर गहन चर्चा और अध्ययन हुआ। कार्यक्रम में सिंधु समझौते की किताब के लेखक अशोक मोटवानी की किताब पर भी चर्चा हुई। इसके अलावा सेना निवृत्त मेजर जनरल गोवर्धन सिंह जम्वाल ने इस मौके पर बड़ी कड़ाई से कहा कि जम्मू के लोगों की बात इसलिए नहीं सुनी जाती क्योंकि वो बोलते ही नहीं हैं।
Nobody hears us. We always complain, Douglas, Jammu people, nobody listens to us. Yes. Why should they listen to you? Because you don't speak. You don't take part in any discussion.
93 साल के मेजर जनरल की इस बात से पूरे कार्यक्रम में हर कोई सोचने पर मजबूर हो गया कि अब तक जम्मू से कोई आवाज उठाई क्यों नहीं गई। इस कथन से अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जम्मू कश्मीर शोध संस्थान का आधार भी साफ तौर पर स्पष्ट हो जाता है कि ये संस्थान इसलिए बनाया गया है कि इसमें जम्मू कश्मीर के विषय पर वहां के गणमान्य लोग चर्चा करके बड़े बड़े मामलों का हल सुझाएं और वो हल सरकार और नीतियां बनाने वाले जिम्मेदार लोगों तक पहुंचे। ब्रिगेडियर डॉक्टर विजय सागर धीमान अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जम्मू कश्मीर शोध संस्थान के संस्थापक हैं और उन्होंने अपने पिता स्वर्गीय श्री विद्यासागर जी धीमान के जन्मदिवस पर इस संस्थान का पहला ऑफलाइन लॉन्च किया। स्वर्गीय श्री विद्यासागर जी धीमान ने इंजीनियरिंग में स्वर्ण पदक हासिल करने के साथ साथ गरीब बच्चों की पढ़ाई के लिए एक ट्रस्ट की भी स्थापना की है, जिसका नाम लीला रानी धीमान एजुकेशन एंड चैरिटेबल ट्रस्ट है। विद्या हर किसी तक पहुंचे, इस मिशन की शुरुआत ब्रिगेडियर धीमान के पिताजी ने ही की थी और उसे आगे ले जाने का काम ब्रिगेडियर धीमान लगातार कर रहे हैं। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जम्मू कश्मीर शोध संस्थान भी इस मिशन के तहत शुरू किया गया है ताकि जो विद्या जम्मू कश्मीर के गणमान्य लोगों के पास है उसके जरिए शोध और चर्चा हो और नीति बनाने वाले जिम्मेदारों के पास वो बात पहुंच जाए। आज के इस जमाने में जब मीडिया किसी विषय पर एक तरफा बात करता है और ज्यादातर चर्चाएं किसी निजी स्वार्थ को पूरा करने की दिशा में की जाती हैं, वहां पर एक ऐसे मंच की बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत थी जहां निष्पक्ष रूप से बात हो और गहन चर्चा के बाद हल निकले और वो नीतियां बनाने वालों के पास पहुंचे। इस ऑफलाइन लॉन्च में सिंधु समझौते पर बहुत गहन चर्चा हुई, जिसमें लेखक अशोक मोटवानी, वरिष्ठ पत्रकार संत शर्मा, प्रोफेसर दिवाशंकर, सेना निवृत्त मेजर जनरल गोवर्धन सिंह जम्वाल ने हिस्सा लिया और साथ ही कई लोग दूसरे देशों से ऑनलाइन भी जुड़े रहे। इस कार्यक्रम के मुख्य अतिथि रिटायर्ड IAS विजय बकाया रहे, जिन्होंने पूरी चर्चा सुनने के बाद ये निष्कर्ष निकाला कि इस समझौते को खत्म करना भारत का अंतर्राष्ट्रीय पटल पर अपमान होगा, लिहाजा इसे खत्म करने के बारे में बात करने के बजाय भारत के हिस्से में जितना पानी है उसका पूरा उपयोग करना चाहिए।
We are a responsible country and we are internationally very sensitive to all the nuances. Secondly, what has come out of this discussion is that the water from the eastern rivers, which is going waste, can be harnessed if we have the real technology, if we use the real technology.
उनके मुताबिक जम्मू के लोगों को भी आवाज उठानी होगी और फलों के कारोबार के अलावा और कई ऐसे काम हैं जो अच्छी तरह से करके अपने लिए रोजगार के और साधन खोलने होंगे। इस कार्यक्रम में जनरल जम्वाल ने जम्मू को अलग राज्य बनाने के मुद्दे पर भी बात की और कहा कि जम्मू और कश्मीर दोनों की तरक्की केवल तभी हो सकती है जब जम्मू को अलग राज्य का दर्जा मिले और वो केवल तभी हो सकता है जब जम्मू के लोग आवाज उठाएं। सभी लोगों ने इस मौके पर ब्रिगेडियर धीमान को उनके इस काम के लिए बधाई दी और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जम्मू कश्मीर शोध संस्थान के भविष्य के लिए शुभकामनाएं भी दी।
Well, venerable ladies and gentlemen, and my all young friends, I'm really delighted to see you all here, and especially the youth. The kind of enthusiasm that you are displaying about all these current affairs which affect us directly, it's tremendous, and I really congratulate you all of you for that. And I also have very, very special guests with us, the eminent panelists. I have Venerable Lieutenant General KJ Singh. He is a career soldier, a really thorough career guy, and doing something very important work right now, even after being the Army Commander of the Western Command. And his analysis, apt analysis, is recognized everywhere. Everybody knows that his views are absolutely, what do you call, objective. And lot of people in the government, the policy makers, they look forward to his opinion because there's a lot of crux and a lot of substance in it. Then we also have Gargi ma'am with us. She's another very apt analyst, and she's been working for last about 20 years in the economic capital of India, that's Bombay, and she will be the second speaker over here. Then we have a very eminent personality from Jammu, a very strong activist, and soon to be going to be a political party officially recognized, Mr. Ankush Sharma, Advocate Ankush Sharma, who has a lot of previous, at a very young age, he has been able to sort of strike off the critical sort of issues of Jammu and Kashmir, whether it is Jammu and Kashmir High Court or even the Supreme Court of India. And his efforts are very pro people, and he's trying to fight it out for the people of Jammu, and he'll be another speaker. Unfortunately, Professor Hari Om, another very eminent thinker, a personality, academician, an intellectual, was supposed to be here today with us, but unfortunately, a bit of a problem in his family. He had to shift to Chandigarh for a medical emergency in the family, so he'll not be able to join us today. But then, nevertheless, we have enough intellectuals with us to talk about the present subject. And besides that, we have Jandyal sir with us, and Professor Suresh Chandra will be joining us very soon, and even DGP Mr. Kuldeep Koda will be joining us very soon, and Major General Govardhan Singh Jhamwal, who's another legend in himself, is also with us to initiate the discussion of the subject. But then I would also request academicians like Professor Shalini Rana with us, and the other young researchers, the research scholars, kindly join in the discussion in a very open and a frank manner. This particular platform is an objective academic platform. Here you can speak anything you feel like. There are no directions to be given to anybody. Only rider is, only the caveat is, please don't be emotional with your views. In case you feel very strong about it, hold your horses, make your opinion, and try and take others also, their inputs also in it. Because the way you want others to respect your opinion, you should also give the equal amount of respect to their opinions, nevertheless, even if you don't agree with it. So with this, I would introduce the subject of today. Well, it is the illegal migrants in India. After especially 1971 war, we've been talking about a lot of Bangladeshis entering India in illegal manner. Well, that scenario was different. Lots of things happened. Politics was different. We were naive. We were not aware as to how these people are going to come in. What is their agenda? What is the sinister design? Is it only an occupation? Is it only livelihood? Better pastures in India, or something more? So all these things were not known at that particular time. And maybe around 80s and 90s, we talked about the illegal migrants in a big way. But unfortunately, in the last decade, this became something very serious thing. There was a problem in Myanmar. It's a problem of the internal matter of Myanmar, and a lot of Rohingyas started moving out of the country. Now, well, it is understandable if they take refuge into Bangladesh, because majority of the borders with them, or even for that matter, I can understand they can come to Meghalaya because the Kaladan project is already on this thing being worked on. Okay, even Manipur, even Nagaland, even Assam, or even for that matter, I go a step forward. I said give them a leverage that they have entered West Bengal. But the point, ladies and gentlemen, today is who are these illegal migrants? What is their purpose? Who has given them an air ticket to Jammu? Who has given them an air ticket to Jaipur? Who has given them an air ticket to Bangalore, Hyderabad, Bhopal, Lucknow? How are they panning out in the entire country? Is there a sinister design about it? Like, I did a bit of investigation. I'll share with you my facts. I asked somebody, I said, look, they're illegal migrants. How is it that they're able to acquire some kind of a political status in the country? How are they on the voters list? I was point blank told by the gentleman, sir, what are you talking about? Give me 50,000 rupees per person. I will give you the Aadhaar card, PAN card, voter ID card, affidavit of a rent lease deed. You ask for a legal document, it will be provided to you. Well, who are these people providing this 50,000 rupees per person? Where is this money coming from? Are we to blame our leftists? Are we to blame our Latvians? Or are we to blame the ISI? Is there a particular sort of a sinister design behind it? Is it being done to a purpose? So that is the question we are asking. Now, I will try and answer this question of purpose. I came to Jammu a couple of years back, and I was talking about Rohingyas. I was invited by one of the chief executive officers of the municipality for dinner. So I, like a Fauji, was there at 8 o'clock, and we kept waiting. 9:30, I get a phone call, like the gentleman's family gets a phone call कि पापा late हो जाएंगे, and uncle को बोलो अपनी drink लगा लो. I said, what nonsense! I have not come here to have the drink with you. Aim was to sit with you, and I am here for 1.5 hours. Where the hell are you? I mean, I was out totally in a rage. The gentleman came back around 10:15, and I said, where the hell were you? He was incidentally my cousin. He said, यार ऐसा है कि morning में मेरे को Chief Minister महबूबा मुफ्ती ने बुलाया, and she told me, gave me certain directions, and then I was given a categorical direction that complete this task by evening 6 o'clock, and then give me the report personally. He said, I finished the task at 6 o'clock, went to Mehbooba Mufti's house, and I had to keep waiting for an audience till 10 o'clock. That's why I'm late. Now, what was the task? There is a illegal colony of Rohingyas in Jammu, somewhere near Batindi. That too is somewhat illegal because of the Roshni Act, different subject. But then, at that colony, if there are illegal migrants, you can expect some juggies over there, some juggi jhonpadis, some temporary structures over there. They were proper structures. And this gentleman, who is the chief executive officer of the municipality, he was sent there to check if the sewage is proper. Water, potable water is available to them. Electricity is there. Their civic conditions are good. And if they are not good, they must be improved in a day and the report given to Chief Minister. Now, if Chief Minister is working on that, what is the purpose? Is she looking for votes for herself? That could be a reason. Or there is something else. And what is that something else? Now, that's what we're going to debate today. Now, bit of a hypothesis that something else could be Ghazwa Hind, that something else could be Pakistan's unfinished agenda, that could be ISI agenda of Islamic states, and it could be the latest one which you all are hearing is ISK, Islamic State of Khorasan. That includes Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, parts of Iran, parts of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. Now, is that the agenda? Now, these are the hypotheses. We have the experts over here who will be giving us the factual information on the subject, who will be corroborating the hypothesis in whatever way. And thereafter, we have the eminent panelists who are also intellectuals and a lot of my young friends. So I'm looking towards you, my young friends, to participate in the discussion. If you're not clear about the subject, ask for it. And if you are clear about the subject, give your opinion on it, because your opinion matters. We are aware about the general machination. How do they spread? What do they do? They normally find areas which are next to the cantonments and the sensitive installations. And I reiterate what I said earlier. Well, it could be a part of a plan. Maybe that is the way things are going. And regarding your first suggestion, sir, firstly, of course, you told us about the Shahpur Kandi plan. Well, we are with you, sir, absolutely. Had this been done when Indus Water Treaty was, conceived, at that time, this area from Jammu to right till Pathankot, Lakhanpur would not have been Kandi anymore. This would have been a lower Shivalik. They would all become absolute green and full of horticulture and beautiful valleys, sir. Lovely tourist places. Secondly, you talked about Dhar Road, sir. Let me tell you, first of all, I was Jeevan Officer 1 Corps during our Parakram. We did develop it for the movement of the armor columns, and that was practiced and done. But more than that, since your observation is very right, sir, this was even when Ranjit Singh's time, when this areas of Punjab to Afghanistan was under constant threat, and total wars, whether it's Sikhs versus Afghans or Marathas versus Afghans or Afghans invading and all those things. All the traditional GT route, which was to be taken by the travelers, that had become unsafe. So that is the time Raja Ranjit Dev was ruling in Jammu, that is 1735. I may be wrong in my century and the date. But when it was his rule, that time they had developed a new route which has started from Nahan to Kangra to Dalhousie, Nurpur, Bhadrawa, and places like that. And that was all this, what we are talking east of that beautiful valley which you're talking. That was me who was talking about seeing from the air. Being an air defense guy, I always look down how the thing looks like to the enemy aircraft when it looks down. So I found very beautiful stuff there. So this was used in those times, and a lot of the Basoli culture, Kannada culture, that was a result of that. Nevertheless, thank you very much, sir. We seized of this particular thing, and today since we're talking about Rohingyas, may I request Advocate Ankush Sharma to give us a bit of a synopsis of this problem, which is specific to Jammu. So, Advocate Ankush Sharma, please.
Thank you, Brigadier Saab, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to address. Lieutenant General Singh Saab talked about so many things about Rohingyas and Rohingyas, even the pronunciation, etc., and the background, Rakhine province and Arakanese Muslims. So I will specifically, without repeating the same facts, would like to point out at a dimension which is very less talked about, which is, and I'll deal with this problem of Rohingyas in a very holistic manner, starting with Pakistan as to what Pakistan plans with J&K. Pakistan's ultimate is Islamization of Himalayas. And why do Pakistan want to Islamize Himalayas? It is home of Sanatan Indic civilization. Janani, Palana, as they say in Hindi. Now, to wipe off Sanatan Indic civilization, Islamization of Himalayas is the first step. Now, in that, they've already Islamized entire Kashmir. It started in, 13th or 14th century, way back with the latest after independence in 90s. So, Islamization of Kashmir is over. Now, the next step is to Islamize Jammu. And we have seen that how Islamization of Jammu has been a state-led and state-sponsored process in J&K. Now, why do I say it is state-led and state-sponsored? And how do I say this? You've all seen that it is only the state actors, it is only the political parties of Kashmir which entered our democratic institutions, subverted our democracy from within, and legislated laws like Roshni Act, through which they allotted several lakhs of canals of state land, I repeat, state land, in Jammu province to Muslims from outside. So, using our legislative institutions, they unleashed legislative jihad against Jammu with an intent to invade it demographically, and land jihad is the name which has been given. So this is through legislative mode. Now you also saw an executive order passed by the chief minister of the state, which I exposed, which I brought in public domain, which was a classified document, and after which a lot of hue and cry, and then chief minister and I, Mehbooba Mufti, everything is history now. You've seen that struggle. That granted legal immunity to Muslims for occupying lands of all types in Jammu. Now, what did it say? It was a 4-page order. It said, if Muslims occupy state lands, forest lands, or any other lands in Jammu province, no DM and SSP will initiate any action against it. The second portion of the order was like this. Suppose there is a court order of eviction and it becomes unavoidable to carry out eviction of Muslims in Hindu-dominated Jammu province. Then there were categorical directions issued to SSP and DMs, district magistrates, not to provide any kind of police assistance for carrying out any such evictions. So there was legal. Now, in J&K High Court, we successfully, it happened that the Honorable J&K High Court of J&K at Jammu put in place a team headed by District and Sessions Judge Jammu, along with Divisional Commissioner Jammu and Deputy Commissioner and few other government members who were tasked to prepare a report telling the High Court that who are the people, along with details, who have occupied River Tavi in Jammu's municipal limits. So that committee submitted a report before J&K High Court in a sealed cover on affidavit, detailing the names and other details of the encroachers. 668 names were given, along with photographs of their construction and khasra number which they have occupied and other relevant information, a copy of which is available with me. Out of 668, 667 were Muslims. And what was the reason? That in a Hindu-dominated Jammu city, River Tavi, which is revered as Suryaputri or a Devi, and the significance of rivers in Sanatan nearly, equal to gods, is occupied by a particular community. So it was found that through acts of omission and commission and active connivance of state actors, they were able to settle. It also happened that we also successfully got reports of forest land encroachments brought in J&K High Court, filed by the Forest Department for all districts. You will be surprised to know, and I have a copy of each and every area, the names, etc. of the encroachment. You will be surprised to know that more than 90% of the forests which have been encroached in the UT of J&K are encroached by Muslims. So you have state lands encroached by Muslims, you have forest lands encroached by Muslims, you have river beds encroached by Muslims, you have other lands encroached by Muslims, you have what is called as funded colonization, that the people who are paying subsidy to make purchases in Hindu-dominated areas in Jammu, and we have proofs of that, and samay pe we have brought it in the public domain as well. Funded colonization of Jammu, etc., happening. Now, when all this is happening, and it is happening through state instrumentalities, by legislating laws, by passing executive orders, and like you, Brigadier Saab, when you said that the Chief Minister of the state sent an army personnel to ensure that Rohingyas who have been settled there are getting all enough benefits or not, you prepare a report and submit it by the end of the day. So these Rohingyas and Bangladeshis, illegal immigrants, the Muslim...
The Chief Executive Officer of a municipality, not army job.
All right. Just the Chief Executive Officer of the municipality. Yeah. So now these assets for these Islamists and separatists who are disguised as mainstream secular political parties in J&K, they came as tools of demographic assault on Jammu. And that is how they were given air tickets, given railway tickets, and in a very, very organized manner were made to settle in Jammu, in Kathua, in Samba, all Hindu-dominated areas, Hindu-majority areas of Jammu province and J&K UT. Now, you will be surprised to know that they have ration cards. Some of them have state subject cards, certificates also. I have at least a photocopy of nearly 400 plus Rohingyas and Bangladeshis who have got Aadhaar cards also. Apart from that, UN card, etc., etc. So it all happened because of state connivance.
Right.
Now, ये surprise जो हमें होता है कि why the state is not acting against these elements. And we carry, webinars करवाएंगे, we will have discussions, and then we'll have TV shows, etc., etc., without even realizing that it is the state apparatus which is being used to settle these individuals in different areas of the country. If you have read Asam Malik's book, the Pakistani brigadier, and then who ultimately rose to become general, I believe also, the Quranic way of concept of jihad, etc. There they say that for Ghazwa-e-Hind to happen, fall of northern India is important, and within northern India, the fall of Jammu is critical. And ultimately, for Ghazwa-e-Hind to happen, Islamization of Himalayas is critical, is important. So, it is in this background, probably, we will have to see the settlement of Rohingyas in Jammu, Jammu Kashmir, elsewhere. Jammu will be used as a launch pad, a springboard to unleash Ghazwa-e-Hind on the rest of the country. And I think that they, in a very subtle way, in a nuanced manner, on the model of Muslim Brotherhood, where how do they purge constitutional democracies? So there comes the model of Muslim Brotherhood. Using and abusing freedoms available under the constitutional democracies to enter democratic institutions, control them from within and subvert them from within, and then using the state apparatus to unleash communal agenda, that is in full play here in J&K. And it is very unfortunate that the government of India is not paying any heed to all these happenings. It is fiddling with the same actors, playing with the same actors, trying to bring back the same actors who, on the model of Muslim Brotherhood, have waged a struggle against the nation of India. Now, that would be another debate as to how do I say that, but I have in many speeches in detail explained as to how the state of India is hostile towards the nation of India, how the state of India is working against the nation of India. For instance, I say that the state of India still believes that India is a nation in the making. It doesn't believe in the civilizational continuity. So when the attack is on the civilization and Islamization of Himalayas is the first project in that, it doesn't pay heed. So you have the state apparatus totally hijacked from within. You have individuals and policies planted within the state apparatus, formulations planted within the state apparatus, through which the state apparatus has been hijacked and has pitched against the nation of India. So I think it is a dangerous trend. You would be surprised to know that everybody knows that there is a Foreigners Act, and under the Foreigners Act, it is the responsibility of the government to drive out these illegal immigrants. And what do you see? In a sensitive state like J&K, where secessionism is Delhi sponsored, Delhi facilitated, and since now we have very less the human rights and the minority case that I fought in the Supreme Court of India and its relation with secessionism, and as to how the Indian state, the government of India, is facilitating and internationalizing the secessionist movement in J&K. I will not be able to discuss in detail on that, but there are my videos on which I've spoken in great detail about these things. They're not taking any action under the Foreigners Act. And ultimately, the diagnosis is, the problem is, we'll have to realize that the state of India has been taken over from within. It is not working against in civilizational interests. It is not working in the interest of the nation. It is pitched against the nation. It is hostile towards the nation. I think we'll have to force the Indian state to make corrections, not like Maoists. We don't want to overthrow it. But there are certain corrections which are required to be made. There are certain formulations which are required to be changed. There are certain policies which are to be abandoned now. There are certain preferences now which have to be given up. And only thereafter we'll be able to take control of the state. Ultimately, we'll be able to do so many things, including driving away Rohingyas. Like General Singh said, the first step is to quarantine them. But you are allowing them to mix amongst the local community in the name of pluralism, in the name of inclusion, all these foolish ideas, all these factually incorrect assumptions, and you're working against the nation. So I think, summarizing my entire address in 3 or 4 sentences, I think that all of us should realize that it's a project of Pakistan to Islamize Himalayas and ultimately Islamize Sanatan and destroy it, and the attack is on the civilization. Rohingyas come very, very handy as assets in meeting that agenda, in taking this fight to its logical conclusions. They have become their foot soldiers. You have people from this community joining terrorist ranks. You have people from this community involved in terrorist attacks. Many of the settlements, Rohingya settlements in Jammu, are around military installations. Does it take a rocket science to know and decide that they have to be removed from here? Now you have laborers in all departments, including government departments, Rohingyas as laborers. I don't know what kind of thinking is going on in Delhi, but I can clearly see that the decision making has been paralyzed. It is paralyzed as it was paralyzed in US before 9/11. I see the same situation here. People are in denial mode. There are individuals who are planted, who would paralyze everything which should happen in the interest of the nation. If you read 9/11 Commission's reports, the state of affair than there was in US, the same in a bigger proportion in India, and we are bleeding to a slow death. It's again a myth कि ईरान मिस्र रोमा सब मिट गए, जहां से कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं मारी. This is also planted by the enemy, which is factually incorrect. You are shrinking. You were a great civilization, big civilization, but you are shrinking at a rate where you are going to collapse and khatam ho jana hai tumne in a very limited time period. Demographic assault, assume in a country like India, is a state-sponsored project. Here in J&K, I have told you, I've talked about laws which were used, secular laws which were used to unleash demographic assault or a communal agenda against Jammu. And Jammu has to be used as a launchpad and a springboard to unleash Ghazwa-e-Hind on the rest of the country. There's a full-fledged plan, and they're working on that. They have entered your democratic institutions. They have subverted your democracy. And the Indian state is still in denial mode. That's the most unfortunate thing. I think the moment better sense prevails, these are not even challenges. These are day-to-day issues which can be handled very easily, provided you have clarity of thought and you have the courage to take the enemy by its horns. I think with this, I'll end this discussion or my speech. Thank you so much for inviting.
Sorry to interject, Ankush Sharma ji and Brigadier Sir in between, but I must say one thing, that we need to go into basics also, sir. And basics are that when we move out of our house and when we see on the roads, there are still our Indian people who are sleeping on the footpath. They are not having their home. They are not having enough food. And we are inviting all these outsiders. And I am very sorry to say, politicians are not doing enough. Is there any sort of big protest like the Anna Hazare protest for getting out these Rohingyas? You people who are in opposition, have you done that? I don't think it has been done.
Let's come down to more serious things. I talked about Roshni Act, J&K State Land Vesting of Ownership to the Occupants Act. I got it demolished through High Court. I filed a public interest litigation in 2014. I was the petitioner in person. I argued the case for 6 long years. And despite opposition by BJP and the ruling parties in the court, ultimately I got it declared constitutional. And there was 6 months window in which all these illegal occupations were to be removed. Land was to be retrieved. So we are working at different levels. We also, in fact, this Rohingyas and Bangladeshi issue, it is, 6 years back, we submitted a memorandum to the governor, the then governor of J&K, and Bohra Sahab also. And ultimately, I can remember that more than 200 plus public meetings and press conferences and addresses and meetings, Ekjut Jammu or in my personal capacity, we have done to bring in awareness amongst the people about the danger that these people pose. 14th February order I talked about, this was a classified document. I came out in public domain calling Chief Minister as Jihadi Mehbooba. He was the sitting Chief Minister. He prepared a dossier against me, wanted to arrest me, detain me under preventive detention. I wanted to register an FIR. She could not do so only because we were spreading so much awareness on these issues that the public was with us and she could not do anything. And ultimately, these issues. So, what precisely is the most important thing that we should realize? That you should realize that protests are not going to work.
It has to be bigger. It has to be bigger. It has to not only in the Jammu. It has to be in Delhi. It has to be on the national.
In Rajasthan, in Maharashtra also.
In everywhere. It has to be done everywhere.
Gentlemen,
just one more. Protests will happen, but the protests should happen against a right cause, in a right direction. Right. Ultimately, the day when we realize that it is the Indian state which is at fault, that it is the Indian state which is backstabbing us, that it is the Indian state which is working against the interests of the nation, it is the Indian state which is hostile to the Indic Sanatan civilization. Only then we'll be able to move in the right direction. I think more webinars are required on this specific issue as to how the Indian state is working against the Indian nation. We'll be able to find new ways and solutions in addressing the problem. The diagnosis has to be proper.
My first question is we are saying the word illegal again and again and again. But I want to say that the word illegal in itself is evil and fundamentally wrong. I want to know that how can a human being be illegal? There can be irregular migrants or undocumented migrants, but not illegal human beings at least. Yes.
Fantastic question. May I request Advocate Nangu to please answer from the law point of view?
No, it's always the context which determines as to what would be the terminology, etc., etc. Under the Foreigners Act, this illegal immigrants is a category, and it is in that context it is being used. It is factually and legally correct. Otherwise, how do you distinguish or how do you define? The kinds of immigrants that we have. There are various categories of immigrants, and Rohingyas and Bangladeshis qualify under law to be called as illegal immigrants, and it is in that context they are termed as illegal immigrants.
Sir, but firstly, they are human beings also.
That's another debate. If everybody is a human, then we in the first place we would not have a visa regime in that case. Anybody can move from one place to another. There are controls. It is for the welfare of humanity. It is in human interest that such kind of laws have been legislated, formulated, and ever since the formation of nation states, this thing has come into force. And if you allow free flow of individuals from one place to another without having proper identification marks, then I think terrorism, etc., and wars, etc., will be a regular phenomena, and there will be no peace. So, if you want peace, then you have to have identification as to what kind of individuals are entering your domain, your country. It's a world about the practicalities of it. You'll have to realize idealism is good, but that is something to be achieved. That is not the reality of the day. We also wish that a day comes when entire world becomes one unit. But we know that there are irrational forces. There are forces of the past who have not let that happen, who do not believe. Their theology doesn't believe in that. And that is not possible. So unless that stage is reached, we'll have to live with this.
So the controversial Citizen Amendment Act, that CAA, which was passed by Parliament in 2019, only made things. The detention in India have a deterring effect on the Rohingyas. They are now afraid of to enter India because they fear that they will be sent back, and the people who safely managed to come to India from Myanmar are now relieving their tough times back home because of the fear they have fear that they will be sent back. The CAA proves a pathway to Indian citizenship for persecuted religious minorities from Afghanistan, like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, who are Hindus, especially Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jainis, Parsis, or Christians. But however, the Rohingyas who are Muslims are not eligible to seek Indian citizenship under the CAA, despite being a persecuted community. So why it is so?
So the ground is unified India before 1947. It is on that basis. Out of the unified India, this Pakistan and Bangladesh were created. Bangladesh in 1971, and Afghanistan has also roots, and 6 from Afghanistan are being given. So it is the responsibility of the Indian state, which ultimately, under pressure from Muslims of India, had to divide or agree to the division of India into two. Now it is their responsibility to protect minorities in these areas. So Myanmar is out of question. So Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan now, the minority persecution which is happening there, it is only for their benefit that India, it is the responsibility of the Indian state to provide them citizenship, because it is the Indian state or Indian government or the Indian leadership which ultimately, under pressure of Muslim politics in 1947, divided and sent them to Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. So if they are being persecuted in the name of religion, it's the Indian government's responsibility, and they are discharging that. So it's legally sound. Historically, if also you see, it's understandable, and you can't have all countries of the world included in this category because that is impossible.
My point is that where does the buck stop for the Jammu population? That is, the Rohingyas are basically settled in Jammu. Now, it's basically Jammu population as such, which has to rise in unison. So Mr. Ankur Sharma was saying that it's basically a state-sponsored, mechanism whereby a Islamization of Himalayas is taking place. Agreed. I fully agree to that, the contention of Mr. Ankur Sharma. But point is, who's elected this state? It's basically the people's representatives. The people. What are the people of Jammu doing? Why can't they rise in unison? The population of Jammu, I'm not trying to tell that people of Jammu, they should take up law in their own hands, but until a groundswell of support, the entire Jammu province rises as one man, Rohingyas will not go from this. I mean, we got dime a dozen cases in India where we have come to know that when the local population, they rose as one, only then that problem was basically eradicated. So my point is, why are the local population of Jammu, so-called Dogras, as General Jamwal also brought out, why are they keeping mute? Why are they not rising in unison? My point is that if you look at it, it's a very famous book written by Mr. R.K. Ori, The Long March of Islam. Being an army officer, I am basically, for me, all religions are equal. But question is, if you read that book by Mr. R.K. Ori, the foreword of which is written by ex-DGP KPS Gill, he's written in that very book that in any area, the moment Muslim population comes at par with the majority, say about 50%, sectarian strife starts off. He's given a very good example of Lebanon. He's given an example of Lebanon, Mr. R.K. Ori, that he told that Lebanon way back in 20s was a typical Christian-dominated country. But after Second World War, the moment this Palestinians started having influx into Lebanon, the entire demographic profile of Lebanon changed. And by late 40s and 50s, the population of Christian versus Muslim was roughly about 51 or 49%. That's the time sectarian strife started. And that sectarian strife is still now the norm. Similar situation, Jammu is going to follow. As of now, Jammu has got a population of roughly about 19-20 lakhs, about 66% populations of Hindus, and about 31 populations basically of Muslims. On top of it, we got Rohingyas, we got Bangladeshis. So we are fast accelerating to that very stage where we may come to a stage where we are heading towards the sectarian strife. My point is that if that be the case, what is the local population of Jammu doing?
Yeah, Satish, you're right. Not only Lebanon, even Syria is the same case. Let advocate.
Bengal also. Bengal, the demographic
my point to
change is
Mr. Ankur
happening.
Sharma is very specific. My point to Mr. Ankur Sharma is very specific. Okay, we are having this discussion on webinar exactly. But point is, when do we take this webinar from drawing room to the streets?
The last 70 years of policy of the state of India as far as state of J&K is concerned is the following. It has to hand over power to the valley politicians, to the political parties of the valley, and the position of Jammu would be second class, hostage, colonized. No, I'm coming. I would be answering that, but I have to give a little background as to how ये बेबसी का आलम कैसे बना है, जिसको हम अपने सेवियर्स समझते हैं, उन्होंने ही हमें होस्टेज कैसे रखा है.
मिस्टर अंकुर शर्मा, वो बेबसी का आलम हमको तोड़ना है, वो टूटेगा कब?
उससे पहले रिकॉग्नाइज करना है कि एनिमी कौन है.
Recognize everybody is aware of that. Everybody is aware of that. Point is that everybody is looking. See, my point is that everybody is thinking same. It means nobody is thinking alike. Nobody is thinking much. Everybody is basically looking towards each other. He is going to pick up the cudgels on my behalf. Why should I look towards him to pick up the cudgels on his behalf? Why can't I pick up the cudgels on myself? Point is that if this mentality doesn't creep into the local population of Jammu, I'm very sorry. We'll confine ourselves to this discussion only because the proof of pudding is in eating. How do you convert this webinar into actual action? Point is that.
Actual action is fighting against an act which was unleashed against Jammu. We fought against that. Now, as far as making it a public movement is concerned, there are so many things which have to happen. First of all, you have to have identification of the real enemy. I am saying that it is the Indian state which has kept us hostage in the hands of Islamists. If you see the Indian state policy paradigm on J&K, no, I am coming to that. मैं सिर्फ एक background दे रहा हूँ. Basically, आप जो बात कह रहे हैं, that is like internalizing the entire problem. और जब आप सारी problem को self blame के जरिए कि लोग कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं, internalize कर देते हैं, then you are not able to externalize and see the bigger enemy. And until and unless you realize कि बड़ी problem कहाँ पे है, you cannot fight it. और आपस में ये सब चीजें होती रहती हैं, somebody creates a confusion, everything fizzles out. मैं आपको ये कह रहा हूं कि वी आर वर्किंग, मैंने आपको शुरू में ये कहा कि 200-250 से ज्यादा पब्लिक मीटिंग्स और तरह तरह की चीजें लोगों में अवेयरनेस फैलाने की दिशा में की जा चुकी हैं, हो रही हैं, पीपल आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग इट। अच्छा, 2014 में पॉलिटिकल फॉर्म में कंसोलिडेटेड एक्सप्रेशन एक पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को दिया गया, लोगों ने कोशिश की, एब्सोल्युटली। उसके बाद वो जो एक व्हीकल क्रिएट हो रहा था लोगों के दिमाग में कि ये व्हीकल हमें इस गुलामी से बाहर निकालेगा, अल्टीमेटली दिल्ली ने उसको उठा के महबूबा मुफ्ती की गोद में सौंप दिया, फिर से होस्टेज रख। मैं ये कह रहा हूं, I am trying to distinguish only one thing, that let us first of all, जो भी enslaved कौमें होती हैं, पिछले 70 साल से हम गुलामी जो फेस कर रहे हैं, एक नॉर्मल टेंडेंसी होती है सेल्फ ब्लेम कि आप ये कहते हैं कि अपनी इस दुर्दशा के कारण के जिम्मेवार हम खुद ही हैं। That is a very dangerous thing to happen.
My point, Mr. Sharma, is like, you see, for Dogras, one should understand they got a ready reckoner in front of them. The example of Kashmiri the Singh Pandits, they know that there's nothing stopping for the same fate of Kashmiri Pandits befalling on them unless they get their act together.
Right.
So when are they going to get their act together? Point is that.
Absolutely.
The point is that
We are working.
It'll be too late. It'll be too little and too less.
Absolutely, I agree with you. But I think,
you see, I'll give you example. I'll give you a personal example. Day before yesterday only, I am not talking about anything else. I'll give you a personal example. I'm a Dogra. I've settled down in Pune. Day before yesterday, I had gone to Bhagwal.
Colonel Malhotra, we'll take this discussion one-to-one later in his office. Let's proceed with the webinar. Yes, may I request Professor?
My point is that Dogras as a race, they have to get up. They have to get up. They have to get their act together, and they have to rise in unison. Until that happens, everything is basically confined to.
Sir, actually is that अगर आपको इतना तो मैं हिंदी में बोलूं क्योंकि मुझे लगता है
Don't worry, डोगरी में बोलो।
डोगरी तो मुझे सॉरी, बट मैं अभी ये बोलती हूँ कि मेरा क्वेश्चन था कि हम जैसे कि जम्मू कश्मीर के रेजिडेंट हैं, तो हम कैसे रिस्पॉन्सिबल हैं रोहिंग्यास के कि वो यहाँ मतलब पूरे विश्व में वो जो फैले हुए हैं उसके लिए हम कैसे रिस्पॉन्सिबल हैं?
या अंकुर जी, कैन यू टेक ऑन?
एब्सोल्युटली, मुझे लग रहा है कि शायद शी इज आस्किंग दिस इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट कि जम्मू के लोग क्या कर रहे हैं प्रोबेबली इन्हें निकालने के लिए। इफ दैट इज द कॉन्टेक्स्ट, आई बिलीव शिवानी में आप पूछ रहे हैं।
यस सर, यू आर राइट। एक्चुअली क्वेश्चन यही है कि हम जम्मू कश्मीर के लोग रोहिंग्यास के लिए कैसे रिस्पॉन्सिबल हैं?
रिस्पॉन्सिबल की बात कर रहे हैं,
हमारा क्या रोल है, तो हम कैसे रिस्पॉन्सिबल हैं उस चीज के लिए?
हमारा रोल यही है कि ये सुनिश्चित करना कि इन्हें जल्द से जल्द कानून के तहत कार्रवाई करके देश से बाहर निकाला जाए, वो हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है।
सर एक्चुअली यही हम भी कह रहे हैं कि ये हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, लेकिन हमसे बढ़कर जैसे आप सबके पास ऐसा दायित्व भी है कि आप ऐसा कर सकते हैं। हम तो हम आपके साथ तो हैं ही हमेशा, तो हमें ये बताइए कि हम कैसे रोल प्ले करें या हमें क्या करना चाहिए उसके लिए?
देखिए, अवेयरनेस फैलाना अपने लोगों के बीच में सबसे पहले तो ब्लाइंड किया जाता है प्रोपेगेंडा से। तो इस इश्यू को लेकर अवेयरनेस फैलाना, इस इश्यू पे बातचीत करना, लोगों के कारण बताना कि किस तरीके से नेशनल सिक्योरिटी को भी खतरा है, नेशनल सिक्योरिटी इम्पेरेटिव्स डिस्कस करना, उसमें रोहिंग्याज और बांग्लादेशीज की जो इलीगल इमिग्रेशन है, इलीगल इमिग्रेंट्स किस किस तरीके के खतरे पोज करते हैं, क्या हमारी परिस्थिति अभी है, इस पे अवेयरनेस फैलाना। और फिर उसके बाद कुछ फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर्स रहते हैं, जिसके बाद इट बिकम्स अ पब्लिक मूवमेंट ऑल्सो। लेकिन आपको निरंतर बिना रुके हुए इन इश्यूज को लेके लोगों में अवेयरनेस फैलाने का काम करना होगा। आज आपने पूरी डिटेल में अलग अलग एक्सपर्ट से इस इश्यू पे बहुत कुछ सुना होगा। आप अपनी रिसर्च कर सकती हैं, अपने लेवल पे, अपने सिटी में, अपने गांव में, अपने मोहल्ले में, अपने रिश्तेदारों में इस इश्यू को डिस्कस कर सकते हैं, अवेयरनेस फैला सकते हैं। और फिर समय समय पे ऐसे ट्रिगर पॉइंट्स आते हैं, फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर्स आते हैं, जब एक बड़ी मूवमेंट जन्म लेती है। तो मुझे लगता है कि आप अपने लेवल पे अवेयरनेस फैलाने का काम करेंगे इस विषय पे।
Yes sir, thank you sir.
Right now we are debating on like illegal
illegal, unauthorized. So this has become a dilemma to me right now.
So the dilemma, there should not be any dilemma because the Supreme Court is also clear on this. And as far as the state of India's argument in Supreme Court was this, India is not a signatory to the Convention on Refugees, the UN Convention on Refugees. So there's no legal binding on India to allow them to stay here for as long as they want. In fact, the law is otherwise. The law is prescribed under the Foreigners Act. Under the Foreigners Act, it is the responsibility of the union government to deport them, to take care of them as illegal immigrants.
But Ankur sir, what to do when the political calculations, and because of those political calculations, and vote bank politics, of course, many politicians are pampering these people, and they want these people to come, including Mamata Banerjee and many more. So, what to do in such a situation?
In such a situation, you can't do anything except to form a political party of your own or come in politics and try not to be politically correct. In fact, we have been fighting here since 2014 in frontal role. But in 2018, we formed a party, Ekjut Jammu. It is under process registration. I think in a month or so we'll get it. And these initiatives have to come from the individuals. We have to take responsibility. Until unless the polity changes, nothing changes in a parliamentary form of democracy. You'll have to understand that. You can't rely on these individuals who ultimately bank upon vote banks and compromise national security. Even national security is not a line for them. They even cross that as well. So I think the only solution is to take responsibility and join politics.